Tom, what is the process of Nobel Prize? If he's able to do that, who nominates? Because most of the Nobel winners are on the left.
Nobel Prizes, you can go look this up, are given through an arcane nomination process, and they go into a back room and they decide who they're going to give it to. And the Nobel Peace Prize is basically a political football. You look around the world at people that have really caused peace, and you have Obama made a couple speeches as soon as he was inaugurated in '09. Oh my goodness, we give it to for fostering an environment of peace. He didn't do anything. He didn't do anything.
I told you Patrick Bet-David just turned Barack Obama into his personal punching bag. Not with fists, but with words sharp enough to slice through Secret Service glass. This isn't politics as usual. This is a full-blown roast masquerading as commentary, and it's got everyone clutching their pearls. How does a businessman stroll into the ring and leave a two-term president wobbling? Stick around. This meltdown is too good to miss.
Okay. So you hear these stories, and it's becoming more and more and more. I guess here's the question. If they got a divorce, what's the big deal?
Nothing. Okay. Absolutely nothing.
So if they got a divorce and it didn't work out, Michelle's doing a podcast. I saw the numbers yesterday. Their episodes keep getting fewer and fewer views, according to.
You want me to tell you the numbers,
If you have it, yeah.
So
Sure.
the new podcast continues to tank. The viewership is down over 75% compared to her first episode. Her viewership has been dropping since her show on March 12th. So it went from episode 1, 335,000. Episode 2, 194,000. Episode 3, it jumped back up. Episode 5, 141. Episode 6, 63,000 views.
Can you just go to the channel wrap? Let's see how it's doing.
So people are just not feeling it.
It's ranked 34 on Spotify.
And you know what? Why he's looking it up? It's not fair. Like, if you're in an unhappy relationship, I feel like when it comes to politics and these politicians, you have to stay together because of your public image. And it's like, bro, you're unhappy.
Patrick Bet-David built his empire tearing apart business myths and forcing people to rethink everything they believed about money, power, and leadership. But lately, he turned that razor-sharp analysis on someone most consider untouchable, Barack Obama. The result? Picture a heavyweight boxer stepping into the ring with a magician and ripping the curtain back to reveal it was all smoke and mirrors.
So when I look at Obama, he had an opportunity, but he wasn't raised with a black American. So he don't connect with us. He don't relate to us because he's not a black American. He come from an African man who had a baby with a white woman overseas and raised by his white racist granddaddy and his loving white grandmama. He grew up at school dating white women. Like, who you date, your mama? Michelle was a political move for him.
You think so?
He would never got elected had he had a white woman. That's why Kamala couldn't get elected. Ain't nobody vote for no black woman with no white man coming from our culture.
Obama's carefully polished image didn't just take a scratch. It got smashed by a political wrecking ball, leaving cracks everyone can see. And people still can't believe how hard that blow landed. For over a decade, Obama has walked around carrying an almost untouchable aura, the golden boy of politics who could seemingly do no wrong. The smooth, calculated speeches, the charismatic smile, the effortless movie star presence. It all felt like the political equivalent of a Marvel superhero origin story brought to life.
Barack Obama's sitting like that. Where is his junk? It has to be mushed and mashed.
That's what you interrupted. That's what you interrupted Tom for? He's talking about his marriage?
Tom was saying something about the challenge of marriage, but listen, you know who else is like that? Gavin Newsom.
Oh, hardcore.
They sit like that. That takes
hurts.
art. That's
hurt.
Yeah, but anyways, going back
grown
to
ups here,
what
guys.
were some of the things
Another
that
guy
he
with
said?
no junk.
What did they say? What are some of the things? Not that one. If you go to the Sean Ryan picture, the Sean Ryan Newsom picture,
it's so condensed.
That's the one you want to look at.
Every failure got repackaged as a noble effort. Every scandal quietly swept beneath a rug woven from hope and change. Obama turned into the eternal prom king, who never surrendered the crown, gliding through reunions, flashing that familiar grin, reminding everyone that yes, he once gave that killer speech, and yes, he still slips perfectly into the tux. But then steps in Patrick Bet-David, a businessman who couldn't care less about the tux, the crown, or any sentimental political nostalgia. He cares only about receipts, numbers, cold facts, and he's perfectly willing to laugh while dumping an entire bucket of ice water over the fantasy.
So there are three things hiding in plain sight here. The first that's hiding in plain sight was that Obama was nowhere in sight. He didn't come to a podium. He didn't do one of those impromptu interviews. The media that follows him around where he goes for his foundation or things he does didn't come up behind him. He didn't go on the podcast with his wife where he was talking about young men and things and needing gay friends a week ago to come back and says, I don't need any of this crap. No, nothing. Obama was silent.
And that's what made this takedown hurt more than the usual partisan jab. Politicians get criticized every day. It's background noise. But when someone like PBD shows up with business logic sharper than a guillotine, people sit up straight. Because suddenly it isn't mudslinging, it's math. It's someone slapping down the scorecard and saying, look at the stats, not the slogans. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Start with the economy. Obama was marketed as the middle-class savior, the steady hand who'd pull America out of the financial crisis. On the surface, sure, the story sparkled. Stock market soared, banks were rescued, unemployment ticked down. But Patrick zoomed in like an auditor hunting missing decimals, and the cracks lit up like neon. Middle-class wages flatlined, costs of living ballooned, and average families ran on a treadmill just to stay upright. Meanwhile, the rich got richer, Wall Street sprouted like a weed after a storm, and regular Americans kept clipping coupons, grinding double shifts, and praying their car wouldn't die. Obama became a paradox, celebrated for saving the people while the people themselves felt crushed under the weight of hope and change.
You got Trump, you got Obama. What do you think about Obama? How much did Obama do for the black community?
Nothing.
You don't think he did a lot of good for the black community?
He didn't do nothing.
He didn't change your life positively, like?
He changed.
But he's black.
He spent 8 years. He spent 8 years giving the homosexual community all of our civil rights. We still need a little bit more. So Dr. King and them fight wasn't for integration. It wasn't really to take the Jim Crow signs down. The initial fight, and it lasted for a while. The initial fight was equal rights and equal protection under the law.
Patrick framed it with the brutal simplicity only a businessman could pull off. If a CEO bragged about success while his employees couldn't afford lunch, would you applaud him? That's how he flipped the script. He yanked Obama's economic record out of the glossy campaign brochure and ran it through a real profit and loss statement. The picture wasn't flattering. More like realizing the fancy restaurant you love for its ambience has been serving you reheated leftovers at 5-star prices. Then Patrick moved to foreign policy. Obama promised hope, change, and fewer military adventures. Remember that Nobel Peace Prize glow-up? He was practically crowned the global peace prophet before he even found the light switches in the Oval Office. But Patrick stripped that halo down to raw bullet points. Record drone strikes, endless Middle Eastern conflicts, and America's reputation abroad sold off like a clearance rack. For a man who vowed to end wars, Obama had a remarkable talent for creating fresh headlines with the words civilian casualties. Patrick didn't even need sarcasm, the irony was already baked in. Obama, the peace icon, expanded war strategies in ways that made critics dizzy. And when Patrick laid it out, it was like pointing out the lifeguard at the pool is the one lobbing water balloons at the kids.
So Obama could not relate to the black American struggle coming from the Nigger slave. He's not a seed of a slave. So why would he cry with us? He went and cried with his people, homosexuals.
Those are his people.
Them his people. Them his people.
Stop.
You saw what listen.
You think?
Yeah, he gave them the world. Yeah, them his people. How you recognize your kind? By their actions? Homosexual got action.
Of course, you can't bring up Obama without mentioning health care, the Affordable Care Act, his crown jewel, his legacy-defining policy. On paper, it sounded heroic. Health care for all, affordability for everyone, a system built on fairness. But in practice, families watched premiums skyrocket, small businesses drowned under crushing paperwork, and people learned that affordable was just a clever synonym for slightly less bankrupting than before. Patrick skewered this with the precision of a surgeon wielding a scalpel. For him, it wasn't just about the policy, it was about how people lived it. The average worker wasn't boasting about their shiny new healthcare plan, they were groaning over bills that landed like a bad joke on payday. And that's where Patrick hit hardest. He didn't mock Obama's charisma or soaring speeches. He dismantled the gaping chasm between perception and reality, Because Obama excelled at storytelling, at making people feel inspired even while quietly struggling. But PBD countered with cold math, pointing to numbers that refused to lie. And it was devastating because it raised the uncomfortable question, was Obama's success a narrative masterpiece rather than an actual reality? That's why the fallout felt like an earthquake. Obama loyalists lost their minds. The internet erupted into two ferocious camps: diehard defenders who treated him like the final boss of politics, and skeptics who suddenly wondered if they'd been duped by the greatest salesman of the century. Social media turned into a war zone. Supporters clung to nostalgia like a shield. Remember the speeches. Remember the coolness. Critics fired back with charts and graphs echoing Patrick's breakdown. And then there was the middle ground, quietly sipping coffee, whispering, "Wait, he kind of has a point."
They openly talk about the divorce, okay? That people think we're getting a divorce, and they're joking about it. And Obama said a few things. One of the things he talked about was about young men and daughters, and I don't know if this is the one or not.
I have it.
You know which one I'm talking about?
Where they talk about progressives, Democrats, and young men?
Yeah. He was talking about, it was actually it was going in the right direction of a point, and then he talks about every man needs a gay friend. I'm like, oh, you were making a very good point. And then
Patrick bet David's demolition worked because it stripped Obama of his protective armor of charm. 4 years, criticism of Obama usually came packaged with partisan venom, predictable, easy to dismiss. But Patrick came from a completely different angle. He wasn't a political rival. He wasn't a bitter pundit. He was a businessman, a numbers guy, someone who speaks in ROI, KPIs, and balance sheets. And when he applied that cold, analytical lens, Obama's once untouchable image started to look less like a legacy and more like a slick marketing campaign. That's what really stung. Obama's fans could argue politics all day long, but numbers are harder to spin, and facts are trickier to gloss over. It was like catching your favorite magician palming the card. You can't unsee it, and you can never watch the trick the same way again. The wildest part, this wasn't just about Obama. It revealed a bigger cultural shift. For so long, Obama had been treated as sacred, shielded from serious critique by his personality and the aura of history. But Patrick cracked that aura wide open with a crowbar. He reminded everyone that even the most polished leaders aren't immune to scrutiny when the numbers refuse to cooperate. In the end, it was less about destroying Obama personally and more about destroying the illusion of untouchability, and that's what made people stop and think.
Obama's second term, he did none. Obama's first term, I think he did one. And Bush's first and second term, he did none on day one. This guy's come out the gates. One moment he's talking to World Economic Forum. Another second you're looking at him, he's talking to California, chewing out, Bass and Mayor Bass and talking to the folks there. Next minute he's in Vegas talking about no tax on tips. Next minute you're seeing him talking to military folks. Next minute you're seeing him on the media.
And the ripple effects, massive. If someone could openly shred Obama's record without the usual partisan baggage, then maybe no one is safe. The age of sacred cows in politics might finally be ending, and that idea terrifies establishment figures who've built their reputations on carefully curated myths. Because once one domino falls, the rest start to wobble. If Obama can be critiqued with cold, unforgiving logic, then who else is living on borrowed perception? The floodgates swing open, and suddenly leaders who built entire empires on slogans start looking like emperors with no clothes. Patrick Bet David didn't just take aim at Obama's record. He attacked the entire way politics conditions people to worship personalities instead of results. He showed that when you strip away the charisma, the photo ops, and the Netflix deals, you're left with one brutal metric, the same one any CEO faces. Did life actually improve for the people under your leadership? And if the answer is no, then no amount of charm, no perfectly staged smile, can change the grade. That's why this takedown was so mesmerizing. It wasn't a rant. It wasn't angry or emotional. It was clinical, almost surgical, and yet it landed like a comedy roast because the irony was impossible to ignore. The so-called savior of the middle class left that very middle class gasping for air. The Nobel Peace Prize winner expanded warfare. The champion of affordable healthcare left people broke. And the coolest president in history, well, coolness doesn't pay the bills.
I wouldn't look at Obama one way or another. I would simply say, I get it. It's tough. Good, God bless. And don't forget, they were young presidents. They weren't old presidents.
Yes.
So it's a difference when you're a young president. When you're a young president getting out and you're a star power, like Netflix showing everywhere he goes and da-da-da-da-da, it's a different kind of a life.
It was the ultimate unmasking. Obama went from superhero to human in the span of a few bullet points. And once you see the cape as just a costume, it's hard to clap the same way again. The fans will keep defending him. Of course, nostalgia is powerful. People don't want to admit the prom king might have peaked a decade ago, but thanks to Patrick Bet-David, the conversation has shifted. The glow isn't untouchable anymore. Maybe he was just another skilled marketer who knew how to sell a dream. And maybe Patrick Bet-David just sold the world on a new product reality. And here's the kicker. When Patrick pulled back the curtain, he didn't just expose Obama's record. He exposed the playbook. The one every politician secretly follows but prays nobody notices. The blueprint of distraction, where you give speeches so smooth they sound like silk sheets while quietly hoping no one checks the receipts at the bottom of the drawer. Patrick didn't just check. He read them out loud like it was open mic night, and the punchlines wrote themselves.
There hasn't been one moment in our marriage when I thought about quitting. Bull. Every man and woman who has ever been married, you think about quitting. There's a moment you think things will happen. Yeah, that's such BS. We all have that.
She even said it. She said
because
she
we're
hated
human.
him. She said she hated him for 10 years.
Are you admitting on camera that you thought about quitting Kim?
Rob, can you rewind, Rob?
Babe?
Look at how his
Vinny,
legs are
shut up.
crossed. Go back to Barack's legs crossed.
Do humans in relationships
that.
have big fights
Where's his
and you
cross?
say for a split second, is this all worth it? Yeah.
Because for all the charisma, Obama's presidency had the kind of contradictions that would make a philosophy professor cry. He campaigned like the underdog rebel who was going to fight the system, then turned around and became best friends with the same bankers he promised to rein in. It was like watching Robin Hood join the sheriff of Nottingham's country club, then claim it was all part of the plan. And Patrick knew exactly how to highlight that without even raising his voice, just lining up the contradictions like bowling pins and rolling a strike every time. But Patrick wasn't playing the same game. He brought the CEO rulebook into the political arena and essentially said, "Imagine this man was running your company. Would you still be cheering?" And suddenly the applause started sounding a little nervous. Even the cool factor, the thing Obama leaned on like a life raft, looked different when Patrick reframed it. Being cool doesn't mean much when your actual results feel lukewarm. It's like hiring the world's funniest bartender only to realize he can't mix a drink that doesn't taste like lighter fluid.
A new movie comes out. What's the name of that movie? Civil War. Leave the world behind. Our power grid in America hasn't been updated. 75% of it hasn't been updated in 50 years. And you're kind of talking about that. Then you're pitting whites against blacks. There's a line in the movie that says, "Dad, you know if something goes down, we can't trust these white people. I know that's something both you and Mom agree on." Why do you put that line in the movie, Barack? And you were helping with the script. Why would you put that in the movie? Why would you put that in the movie? Barack, weren't you the same guy that gave a talk at the DNC in 2004 about bringing people together? What happened to that guy?
Sure, you laugh at his jokes, but you're still choking down something that burns all the way. That's the trap Obama stumbled into. He gave America a polished stand-up routine when the country was parched for actual results. And Patrick had no hesitation pointing it out, flipping that once untouchable cool image into an overplayed gimmick. Here's where the takedown hit an even deeper nerve. Obama has lived rent-free in America's collective imagination for well over a decade. Every rising politician is compared to him. Every campaign scrambles to borrow a piece of his style. But Patrick yanked the rug out and asked the one question nobody likes to confront. What if the style was always more memorable than the substance? It's the kind of question that makes people shift uncomfortably in their seats because it forces an admission. Maybe we all fell for the packaging instead of the product. That's why this moment wasn't just a roast. It was a sharp, unavoidable reality check. Patrick wasn't tearing down a man. He was dismantling the illusion that charisma automatically equals competence. And in a culture hooked on sound bites, Instagram filters, and slogans, that's about as radical and dangerous as it gets.